very counterintuitive because, if I understand you correctly, Zionism is essentially a turning away from Judaism. Yet Israel is constantly employing or using their religious symbology of Judaism. And so why would Zionism, if it has this contempt or even hatred for, as you were describing earlier, for Judaism, why is it at the same time seemingly embracing this symbology as something that it's very proud of? It seems like a mismatch.
Three things. Thing number one, the evangelical Christians. The evangelical Christians are Israel's biggest supporters, and they're much more powerful and much more numerous than the Jewish Zionists. When you hear Netanyahu speak about biblical exegesis, some interpretation of the Bible, from experience I can tell you, he's talking about Christian evangelical interpretations and not Jewish ones. That's one. Number two, there are Jewish, Orthodox Jewish Zionists, and these guys have developed a mixed up philosophy, a mixed up ideology, where they incorporated Jewish nationalism into their religion. Settlers are the primary example. We consider them, regular, normal Orthodox Jews, we consider them idol worshippers. Zionism is idol worship because it's physicalized a spiritual concept. The actual Jewish identity, it spiritualized the whole Jewish religion. They are like the olden day idol worshippers in the days of the Bible that were religious Jews, but on the side worshipped idols as well. That's the settlers, as far as we're concerned. So that's the second thing. Guys like Ben Gvir, guys like Smotrich, the settler rabbis, that's their thing. Third thing is that it's just a question of symbolism. It's a question of, like they say that there are no atheists in a foxhole. It's just a way to galvanize the troops. Imagine Donald Trump, for example, like the least religious person in the whole Milky Way galaxy, right? Imagine one day, I know, America would be at war, and I know there would be Muslims against Christians or something, and he would start quoting the Bible and Jesus, and we would all know that it's a joke, but it would have value in the sense that the Trumpies, his followers who are religious, let's say, evangelicals or whatever, they would actually say, whoa, Donald Trump is quoting the Bible, this is inspiring to us. And Netanyahu is no more religious than Donald Trump. And by the way, Netanyahu has a daughter who's religious, an Orthodox Jew. He's ashamed of her. Yeah, I know a rabbi that wrote an article about it. But Donald Trump has a daughter who's Jewish, Ivanka. I don't think he's ashamed of her. Maybe she's ashamed of him. But I never heard that vice versa. In any case, Netanyahu is no more religious than Donald Trump. And him quoting that, it's just because he's in an environment where quoting religious symbolism is meaningful. The whole idea of Zionism was to take the Jewish symbols and make them into political tools. To take the Holy Land itself and make it into a political tool. So if they say Israel's the Jewish homeland, right, they're using Israel, the Holy Land, Jerusalem. And the Zionists came to Jerusalem. When the Zionists started Israel, they weren't interested in Jerusalem. Jerusalem was a place of Orthodox Jews. But as Zionism, the Zionist indoctrination, succeeded increasingly in breeding these mixed breed Jews, which are half idol worshippers, half Zionists, half Orthodox Jews, there became an increasing connection between these Jewish symbols and the cooperation of Israeli citizens with people that invoke those symbols. And that's why Netanyahu is doing it. He has no idea what he's talking about. He doesn't really mean it. He doesn't believe in it. It's just, something he does. Kind of like a non-religious, in the olden days, even the non-religious Vikings would talk about the name of Odin, But it doesn't really mean anything. That's just the way Israel's working. And it is very confusing, and it's designed to be confusing. It's designed to be very confusing. Now, there actually were Zionists at the early days of Zionism that said, well, hey, if Israel, if being a Jewish is going to become a nationality, we can indeed have Jews who are Christians. And the Holy Sepulchre will be guarded by Jews who are Christians. And the Omar Mosque will be guarded by Jews who are Muslims. But others disagreed with that. No, the Zionists were creating some fantasy, and they could make it anything they wanted. They made it whatever worked, whatever got people's buy-in, even if it didn't make any sense. And today we have a hodgepodge of unintelligible babble that they call Zionist philosophy. Now, here's more. First, there's the idea that if you are not Jewish, Israel's not your state, which means that Israel can never be the state of its citizens. It's the state of the Jews. So as I was saying, how they look at themselves. They look at the Jewish people the way Turkey looks at the Turkish citizens. They don't think that they're discriminating against non-Jews any more than Turkey would think they're discriminating against non-Turks, non-citizens. Because in America, in France, in Germany, citizenship and nationality is together. They're together. Not in Israel. Now, listen to this. About 10 years ago, there was a Supreme Court case in Israel. Some guys wanted to make an Israeli nationality. They petitioned the court because they said having a Jewish nationality and a Jewish state is discriminatory against Israeli citizens that are not Jewish. And the court said, no, we do not want to make an Israeli nationality. So, well, if we make an Israeli nationality and keep the Jewish nationality, then you can only have one nationality. So are the Israeli Jews Israeli or Jewish? So you're talking about making an Israeli nationality and getting rid of the Jewish nationality, which would be great. That's the truth. But they said, first of all, let me read it to you, okay? This is from the Israel Democracy Institute, a think tank in Israel. They're describing the court's ruling. If the nationality of Jewish citizens of Israel were to be classified as Israeli, the implication would be that Judaism is not a nationality for them, but solely a religion. This idea is antithetical to the fundamental doctrine of Zionism and its main thinkers from Herzl to Ben-Gurion, who saw Zionism as the national movement of the Jewish people. So here you have Zionism stating that we need to have an Israeli nationality, a Jewish nationality, because that's Zionism. And I know the court didn't say that's the way Jews looked at themselves throughout history. They did not. Israel's probably greatest political scientist, Shlomo Avineri, in his book, The Making of Modern Zionism, points out that Gretz, the historian, was the first one, or he was more responsible than anybody else, for making the Jews think of themselves as a nationality. But that's Zionism. It's not Jewish identity. It's a newfangled identity for the Jews. Third, if the nationality of the Jewish Israelis is defined as Israeli rather than Jewish, then the national bond we believe binds together Jews in Israel and Jews in the diaspora will be severed. The court dealt with this last point extensively. It adopted the position that one of Israel's essential characteristics as a quote-unquote Jewish state is its responsibility for the fate of the entire Jewish people, including Jews of the diaspora. The responsibility of the State of Israel for world Jewry is an important expression of the fact that Israel is not an ordinary democratic state, but also a Jewish state. Though we may be divided by geography and citizenship, Israeli and American Jews and their brothers and sisters around the world are members of one nation. So now we have, clearly, somebody submitted that a Jewish nationality, this whole idea that Israel is not this country of its citizens, but the country of this Jewish nationality, is discriminatory. And the answer is, well, yes. But that's what Zionism wants, a country for the Jews. You either have Zionism or you have democracy. And here, by the way, there is no country in the world like this. I cannot overemphasize this. There is no other country in the world like this. And if somebody understands this about Israel and about Zionism, they'll understand a lot of things. So, for example, I'm sure you've heard many times the talking point that, well, there's only one Jewish state and, 25 Arab states or 25 Muslim states. But I have news for you. There is not a single Arab state in the world that's an Arab state in the sense that Israel claims to be a Jewish one. because there's no Arab state that claims to be the nation state of all Arabs. Saudi Arabia is the state of the Saudi Arabians, but it does not claim to be the state of all Arabs all over the world. There is no Muslim state that claims to be the state of all Muslims all over the world. There's only one country that claims to be actually there are two countries that claim to be my state, the United States of America, because I carry their passport, and I am a citizen of America, and Israel, because I'm Jewish, and they unilaterally decided that they are my country. There is no other country in the world like Israel. So somebody tells you, well, you need a Jewish state, the Holocaust, and all of these things. No excuse that Israel has, no utility value that Israel claims, whether it's true or not, no practical purpose that Israel claims is an excuse or justifies Israel claiming that they are the state of all Jews all over the world as opposed to the state of their citizens. The fact that Israel claims to be my state, that it demands my loyalty, there is no excuse for that. Now, when I tell this to people, they say, you're right. Italy doesn't demand the loyalty or doesn't claim any status over the Italian Americans. Why should? My answer, I'm saying no. That's not nearly the problem over here. If I would be Israeli American, then the analogy to Italy to the Italian Americans would be a good analogy. But I'm not an Israeli American. My family's from Poland. It's not that. Well, yes, it's like Italy doesn't claim any status over Italian Americans. It's that Italy doesn't claim any status over the Chinese Americans. Israel arbitrarily decided that they are the country of the Jews. Who made them the spokesman for the Jews? Nobody. They just unilaterally declared themselves such. They declared themselves the spokesmen of the Jews, the speakers of the Jews, the country of the Jews, the nation state of the Jews, their prime minister, the prime minister of the Jews, and this is Zionism. And if you want to get rid of the imbalance in Israel, if you want to make Israel a normal country like all other countries, you need to get rid of this law, this idea of Zionism, that Israel is the state of the Jews. There are many people who claim to be anti-Zionist, but they're not really anti-Zionist. They're really pro-Palestinian. And I'll tell you who those people are. Let's assume theoretically that there would be a two-state solution. And let's assume theoretically the Palestinians and the Israelis would both be happy with it. I know it's not happening, but in theory. And let's assume even that the Palestinians get 90% of the land and Israel ends up with 10% in the Negev desert. But Israel's happy. Are these anti-Zionists now happy? Sure, why not? Well, I'm not happy because nothing changed about Israel in my theoretical scenario. Israel still claims to be the state of the Jews. Israel claims to be not the state of its citizens. There will still be Muslims or Christians or Buddhists or whatever in Israel. Israel's not their state. If you're anti-Zionist, then you want Israel to be the state of its citizens, not the state of the Jews, because that's what Zionism is in a nutshell. Israel's own Supreme Court said it must be that way only because Zionism says so. Because Israel claims to be the state of the Jews. That, you want to fight Zionism? Now I'll give you a way forward.
I'm wondering how this ties into a really interesting observation you made on Katie Halper's show, who we actually just had the
Sure.
interviewing here a moment ago, Katie Halper. So there's an issue you take. Now, I have to get this right because there's so many qualifications. There is an issue you believe with Jews who are denouncing Israel while partaking within pro-Palestinian solidarity movements. And what is the problem exactly there?
The reason why Israel isn't a one-state solution already is because Israel is the state of the Jews and not the state of the Israelis. If Israel would be the state of the Israelis, like all other normal countries, then you'd have Palestinian Israelis, you'd have American Israelis, you'd have, Israeli Israelis, and one person, one vote. But that's not what Israel wants to be, because that's what Zionism says it shouldn't be. Without Zionism, Israel's the state of the Israelis. With Zionism, Israel's the state of the Jews. When Israel says they're my country, in the same breath, The other side of the coin says it's not the country of the non-Jews, even if they're in Israel. Certainly if they're in territories. Therefore, if you want to negate Zionism, and that's really the problem over here. You see, this is the issue. If Israel would be a normal country like Canada, Australia, or America, we wouldn't have these issues. It's because of the ideology of Zionism. Okay? Therefore, since Zionism means that Israel is the country of the Jews, any reinforcement or strengthening of that idea is strengthening Zionism and strengthening the problem. I'm talking about the root cause of the problem. You know, Israel bombing Gaza, you want them to stop bombing Gaza, you can tell them stop bombing Gaza. I got that. So I can tell America don't bomb Afghanistan. Israeli citizens can tell them stop bombing Gaza. Anybody in the world can tell America to stop bombing Afghanistan, let's say, right? But if somebody comes and says, well, no, I'm an American and I'm Jewish, and because I'm Jewish, therefore I have special standing to tell Israel what to do. Even a Jewish guy says Israel is doing something bad. Tell me, what do you mean even a Jewish guy? If you don't like a particular act that Israel's doing, you could be a Zionist and say, you know, I'm a Zionist. I believe Israel's the state of the Jews because that's what Zionism means. And I don't want Israel to bomb Gaza. I want a ceasefire. Those are the left-wing Zionists. But if you want to fight Zionism, if you want to negate Zionism, not just make a ceasefire, make peace. You want to negate Zionism. If you want Israel to be a country like all other countries, which I wish it would be. By the way, this is much a fantasy as a two-state solution because Israel, the Zionists, would never do this. So it's not even on the table. I'm talking theoretically. I would love Israel to be like the United States of America. Anybody that comes and says, because I'm Jewish, therefore I have special standing, and I'm using my special standing as a Jew to tell Israel what to do, excuse me, you're an American. You're Jewish by religion or are you Jewish by nationality? And if you're Jewish by nationality, is Israel the state of the Jewish nation? If you agree with that, then you're a Zionist.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm trying to understand. So is there like a subtext or an implication that when a person does that, they're saying that Israel does represent the Jewish people?
Exactly, because if you say, look, I say that all Jews should object to Israel's claiming to be the state of the Jews. I say all the time, I've been doing it for decades, Israel is no more connected to the Jews than China is. That means not merely that Israel doesn't speak for the Jews. You know, people say, not in my name. Not that this particular act that you're doing should not be done in my name, even though you're the Jewish state. Wrong. No. Israel acting in the name of the Jews, even when they're doing something good, is like China saying they're acting in the name of the Jews. If we want to end Zionism, well, everybody has to understand, Jews and non-Jews, that Israel is the state of the Israelis, not the state of the Jews. Israel must become the state of the Israelis, not the state of the Jews. Any implication, any reinforcement, any strengthening of the idea, the subtext, as you're calling it, that Israel is the state of the Jews, reinforces Zionism, and in the long run, doesn't serve the purpose of peace. Ceasefire, yes, it may. But, and the truth is that Jews in America have an exaggerated sense of their importance or their impact on Israeli policy. But never mind that for now. If you really want to negate Zionism, you must negate this one factor. Israel must become the state of the Israelis and stop claiming to be the state of the Jews. If all Jews would get up and say, I have nothing to do with Israel. I'm an American. You want to act for the Palestinians as an American? You can be on anybody's side you want. You're an American taxpayer. America is supporting Israel. I'm not talking about that politics. You can be on whatever side you want. But if somebody invokes their standing as a Jew to say, look, even a Jew is against Israel, then that even a Jew only makes sense if you agree that Israel represents the Jews. Just this particular thing, you say, no, don't represent me by doing that. Right. So that enforces Zionism. And Israel loves when Jews, these left-wing Zionists, Israel loves it. because it means that there's a connection between Israel and the Jews and Israel's own Supreme Court. This is Zionism. What Jews must do is to say, and by the way, this will help peace more than anything else. Israel, you want to annex the territories that you're occupying? You want one person, one state? There is no reason why you should need specifically a Jewish majority. You're worried about security. Let's talk about it. Let's have a discussion. Give me studies. Let's put the energy that is used to discuss one state, two state, red state, blue state, which is going nowhere, and figure out how to get rid of one law that Israel has. This law, that Israel is the state of the Jews as opposed to the state of its citizens. You know, people say all the time, well, you could be anti-Zionist, Israel has a right to exist, but you don't have a right to say Israel shouldn't exist, although you can criticize Israel policy. No problem, I'm going to criticize Israel policy. One policy, you're the state of the Jews, as opposed to the state of the citizens, change that one policy, and everything's over. The problem with Israel is not that it shouldn't exist, the problem is it does not exist now, meaning not as a nationality. Israel exists as a country, but it's only a doing business name. It's a DBA. The state of the Jews, DBA Israel. It has citizens, but as opposed to the United States of America, Israel is not a nationality. It has no Israeli nationality. As opposed to France, there is no Israeli nationality. Let Israel exist like every other country does. Right now, there's the Jewish state that exists. There's this front called Israel. You don't like the name, you want to call it, I don't care what you call it. Let the citizens decide what to call it. If you don't like the name Israel, call it Herzlstein, I always say. Or whatever you want, call it Charlie, I don't care. But what needs to be done is Israel needs to become a normal country like all other countries. And the way to do it is by changing this one policy of Israel. And the truth is, if people would know about this policy, people would understand what Zionism is and what Israel claims, there'll be a lot less Zionists out there. You know, people say, well, so many Jews are Zionists, but I've asked Jews, you're a Zionist? Yeah. You believe in Israel as the Jewish state? Yeah. Do you know what a Jewish state means? It has a majority Jews. Well, America has majority Christians. Is it a Christian state? Let me tell you what a Jewish state means. It's not run according to Jewish law. It's not run according to the Talmud. It's run contrary to all Jewish laws. Israel's run according to more Roman Catholic laws, more British laws than it is to American law, to Jewish laws. Not run according to Judaism at all. Israel being the Jewish state means, and I'm talking to a Jew now, Israel is your country and not America. Israel is your nation state. Netanyahu is your prime minister. You don't have a right to vote. See, if you're a citizen but not a national of Israel, you have a right to vote. If you're a Jewish national, but you're not a citizen, you have no right to vote. You're Jewish, you have no right to vote, but Israel represents you. Do you think Israel's your country, not America? Do you believe that Japan is to the Japanese, what Israel is to the Jews, that America is to the Americans? What Israel is to the Jewish Americans, America is to the non-Jewish Americans. What Israel is to the Jewish Americans? No, I wouldn't believe that. Then you're an anti-Zionist. Israel's own Supreme Court said that one of the mainstay of Zionism, and it really is the mainstay of Zionism, is that Israel is the state of the Jews, as opposed to the state of its citizens. I agree, all Jews should say not in our name, but not merely this particular act, I don't like you to do this in my name, you should do something else in my name. Rather, we should say, you're like China, claiming to be the Jewish state. We have nothing to do with you, you're not the state of the Jews. American Jews are the state of America. When the Nazis came to the Moroccans and told them to give them Morocco's Jews, so the head of Morocco said, we don't have any Jews here, we only have Moroccans. We are Americans by nationality, I'm Polish, whatever, however you originally, American nationality now, and I'm Jewish by religion. That's it. You want to be Jewish by bagels and lox? That's your Judaism? Doesn't make sense to me, but fine. But Israel has nothing to do with the Jews. The Jews are not a nationality, and even if they would be, Israel's not their country.
I feel it almost begs the question, is Israel actually oppressing Jewish people?
Yes.
And if so, do you see any commonalities between that and how it oppresses the Palestinian people? And this is kind of what I was getting at the beginning of the discussion, whether you see maybe a silver lining there. namely the potential for new forms of allyship?
As a matter of policy, look, obviously anybody who sees those pictures coming out of Gaza, if he has human blood cells in him, right, you can't be indifferent to it. I mean, it's just, it keeps you up at night. No question about it. But I will not do anything that promotes Zionism. The Palestinians are suffering, no question about it. So are the Uyghur Muslims. Tell me why now, yes, anybody interested in human rights issues will be interested in what's going on in Israel and Palestine and with China and the Uyghur Muslims and India and Kashmir. But I, as an American, by nationality, of Polish descent, of the Jewish religion, why would I be more allied with any of these particular groups? Now, again, yeah, Israel's doing it in your name. Well, excuse me, Israel says they're doing it in my name. To me, that's a joke. It's like China doing it in my, and I will not cooperate, and I will not strengthen, and it doesn't do the Palestinians any favors, honestly, in my view. For Jews to do that, I will gladly say, Israel is not the Jewish state. You're doing things, you claim in the name of the Jews, you're lying. You have no standing to do that. You claim to be the state of the Jews. No. You claim to be acting for the sake of the Jews. No. Don't do me your favors. Don't do me any favors. Nothing. Israel is China. Any excuse that Israel has for doing whatever they do by invoking their Jewishness, I denounce that. Absolutely. But for me to say this particular human rights issue, it's not indifference to this issue. It's saying that I have no reason to be more involved in this issue than any other human rights issue. You tell me this is worse now, okay, got it. Last year something else was worse. That's not the point, right? The point is it's counterproductive, really, to the cause for people to perceive even that Jews are represented by Israel. And this allyship, yes, it's true that they persecute Jews. They persecute Orthodox Jews. They don't like us. They want us to disappear off the face of the earth. Or they want to make us into Zionists. They used to want us to disappear off the face of the earth more. Now they want us to become Zionists because they see it's possible to do that. I don't think I would be doing the Palestinians any favor by strengthening Zionism just because they have an ally that's Jewish. I wish the Palestinian people would understand this. They're very happy when Jews, Orthodox, non-Orthodox, are on their side. And I mentioned to you earlier today that I saw an interview you did with a very articulate Muslim who was saying that even Jews now are against Israel. If I had an opportunity to speak to this Muslim, I would tell him, when you say even Jews, that presupposes that by default Jews should be supporting Israel. Why? Well, Israel's the state of the Jews, just like by default Americans would be supporting America. But it's wrong. That's Zionism. If you say that by default Jews should be supporting Israel, and it's remarkable that they're not, that means that you're Zionist influenced.
It's almost like there's an aspect of identity politics there.
Yes, I call it identity theft.
Yeah, identity theft.
Identity theft.
It almost reaches a level of superstition. It's like
yes.
The moment you say that, or the expectation is the moment that you say, I'm Jewish, it must mean that you support Israel. Right.
Well, of course, if you say you're Turkish, that means you must support Turkey, by default. Not everybody does. If you say you're American, you support America. Remember, Israel is to the Jews what America is to the Americans. That's Zionism. And if you think that by default Jews should support Israel, then by default you're thinking that Israel is the state of the Jews the way Americans would support America. That is what this Muslim guy is thinking in his head. And if I had an opportunity to explain to them that I understand that they're looking for allies. And I understand that they're looking, I call it the Jane Fonda effect. You've heard this from me. They're looking for their Jane Fondas. But Jane Fonda was an American who was siding with the North Vietnamese. You want Israelis? I'm looking for IVP, Israeli Voice for Peace. That's what you should look for. There were Israeli anti-Zionist organization. There was Matzpen, means compass, a communist organization. A guy, Akiva Or, who was absolutely not religious, but he wrote books explaining this very well. If the Palestinians are looking for allies, let them look for Israelis, Israeli allies. A Jewish guy in America is an ally. Yeah, they got an extra ally, but the price they paid for that ally is that they're now supporting Zionism in the long run. They're promoting Zionism in the long run. So yeah, if you're looking for a ceasefire, fine. You can be a Zionist and want a ceasefire. And you're looking for left-wing Zionists, because these are the left-wing Zionists. That's the way they are. Fine. But if you're looking to end Zionism, which is toxic for Israelis, for Jews, for Palestinians, Zionism helps nobody. And it hurts everybody. Zionism is bad ideology. I wish all the Israelis and Palestinians long life and health and peace. And I'll do whatever I can, but I do not believe in my heart, from the bottom of my heart. I have studied this for decades. And I can bet a lot of money, and I believe in my heart of hearts, that strengthening Zionism is not going to bring peace. And by Jews invoking their status as Jews to say, by default, Jews should support Israel, but here I'm not, in this particular thing I'm not. Long-term peace is not going to happen. That's Zionism. That means Israel's the state of the Jews. That means it's not the state of the non-Jews, even citizens. If it's not the state of the non-Jews, you need a Jewish majority. If you need a Jewish majority, you need to take steps to guarantee a Jewish majority, and that's why Israel's not the same as all other countries in the world.
Rabbi Shapiro, this has been such a multi-layered, thought-provoking discussion. Quite honestly, there's a lot I'm going to be thinking about after it, for days at least. But I'm wondering, before we wrap up, if there's any final thoughts or observations that you'd like to share.
Yeah, I think that people need to learn about Zionism, about Israel. There are books out there. Akiva Or you can actually download his stuff, The Un-Jewish State, I think it's called, and some other title that escapes me for a second. There are books out there that explain this, and we need to understand that Israel doesn't represent the Jews. That understanding, the more people understand that, the closer we are to peace. I'm not King Solomon, and I can't solve all the world's problems. But I do know that in reinforcing Zionism just makes us further away from peace. And negating Zionism, the idea that Israel doesn't represent the Jews, that every country should be the country of its citizens, is the path to peace.
Thank you again, Rabbi Shapiro.
Thank you for having me.